All right, so we got some potentially very exciting news today for the Switch successor. And this comes directly from a developer. This developer came out and spoke publicly about the Switch successor on a forum and how it will apparently pleasantly surprise fans. And what he talked about could potentially be a game changer for Nintendo and pretty much for anybody who picks up the eventual Switch 2 next year and even beyond. I mean, the thing is that when Nintendo comes to mind, what do you usually think about? Of course, it's first-party games. A lot of people buy into Nintendo consoles simply because of their exclusive catalog of games. And the Switch 2, it's not going to be any different in that regard. You buy Nintendo devices for your Marios, your Zeldas, your Pokemons, and the list goes on and on and on. Third-party games, though, they almost kind of come off more as a bonus at times. Nintendo tends to be a little bit more hit and miss when it comes to third-party games. They don't have the greatest reputation when it comes to third-party, and this goes back several generations. Now, I will say, though, that they have improved a lot these past 7 years, because even though the Switch lacks in the power department, it's still a nice option to play some of these third-party games because of the novelty to play it in handheld mode. It does differentiate in that way. So for less graphically demanding games, like let's say Prince of Persia and the Lost Crown from just earlier this year, the Switch is actually a great option to play a game like that. And I think for independent games specifically, the Switch absolutely shines. It was actually my go-to device for indie games pretty much until the Steam Deck came out. But the problem for Nintendo is that, for the most part, outside of a few miracle ports like The Witcher 3, and there was also Nier Automata and a few others, but the Switch misses out on a vast majority of AAA games that other platforms get, and especially when they first launch. And that's one of the main reasons that a large portion of Switch owners also owns at least one other console. Well, that's the thing, because the word on the street right now is that Nintendo will address this exact problem with the Switch successor. Now, quite honestly, though, this entire topic fits within my realm of expectations, and I'll kind of circle back to that here in a little bit. But the fact is that there are still a lot of people out there that are quite frankly assuming that the Switch 2 will continue to miss out on most AAA games. I mean, why wouldn't they? Because Nintendo historically has struggled in this department. And apparently, that was a big discussion over on install forums the other day. As you can see here, there was a user that said games like The Witcher 4 and GTA 6 are not going to be present on Switch 2, at least not in the form that people want them in. And that's when this alleged developer by the name of Matt stepped in. Now, as far as I'm aware, the moderating staff apparently vetted this person as a legitimate developer, and that's the reason that people are currently looking at this as potentially accurate information. Anyways, though, he responded to the idea that games like The Witcher 4 and GTA 6 won't be on the Switch or in the capacity that people want by saying, you know what they say about assumptions. And then he continued on in a separate response by saying, both Nintendo and third parties see Switch 2 AAA titles as a potential growth driver. According to him, the hardware is very capable. Now, both of the things that he mentioned here are incredibly important to this overall topic. And even though he later on clarified that he's not saying the Switch 2 will get every single AAA game, he, however, believes that fans will pleasantly be surprised by what the Switch 2 has to offer. Now, personally, I think everything he said here is 100% correct. I mean, even if we disregard that this person is a developer and they might know what they're talking about, I'm also going to go ahead and use my own logic here because, again, all of this really falls into my realms of what I expect for Nintendo next generation. And let me just kind of explain. I think there's a likely chance that we will see a significant jump in technical capability for the Switch successor compared to the current model for really a few different reasons. One is simply because handheld technology has advanced majorly since 2017 when the Switch first launched. You have to remember that the Switch was the first of its kind. And then all these other devices that's come out since, they have modeled themselves after the Switch and have improved upon them in terms of the power department. That's why we've seen this sudden explosion in the gaming handheld world. Now all of a sudden, there's all of these PC handhelds floating around, whether that be something like the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, or the countless others that's been releasing on a regular cadence. Even PlayStation and Xbox supposedly are going to be jumping into this world sometime in the future. And these devices, they've continuously proven that they're more than capable of running a lot of these modern AAA games. You want to play something like Diablo 4? Yeah, you can play it on here. You want to play Elden Ring? Yeah, you can play that on something like the Steam Deck. And there's countless other AAA games as well. Now, not every AAA game is going to run perfectly on these devices, but the fact is there are a lot of games that can run on lower settings around the 30 FPS mark. And one way to achieve that, and this part's important, is through AI upscaling technology. And that's where I think things get really interesting for the Switch successor. The rumor that we keep hearing is that the Switch 2 will fall somewhere between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro on a hardware level, and that it'll also have NVIDIA DLSS support. And if the Switch 2 has any advantage at all over most of the other gaming options on the market, it's that Nintendo uses NVIDIA-based hardware. There's no doubt about it. DLSS is the cream of the crop in terms of AI upscaling. It is by far the best option that we currently have. And it could potentially be a game changer for Nintendo next generation. The days of judging hardware based on specs alone is kind of a thing of the past. The software is every bit as important to the overall equation, and I think when you combine a PS4-esque type of console from a spec level with NVIDIA DLSS, that seems like a very, very capable machine. In fact, I think a lot of people tend to forget that the PlayStation 4 still actually gets AAA games every single year. Not all of them, of course, but it just got Call of Duty Black Ops 6 a few months ago. And even Sony there for a long time, they were supporting it with a large portion of their first-party games, including Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok. Those are excellent-looking games, and they do run on the PlayStation 4. So yes, the PlayStation 4 is a very capable machine, and that's even without AI upscaling. And most importantly here is you have to remember, we're talking about a home console versus a handheld. Switch is supposed to be a PlayStation 4 with DLSS. That could turn out to be a very impressive combination when all things are said and done. What's just as important here, though, is what Matt mentioned several times. Developers view the Switch successor as a potential growth driver for their games. Now, why is that so important? It's because developers expect the Switch 2 to sell like hotcakes. And where fans go, of course, developers will follow. They want their games to be where gamers are. It's as simple as that. That's just good business sense. And if it's anything like this generation whatsoever, well, then the Switch 2 could sell another 100 plus million units over the course of its life. So you better believe that developers are going to keep that in mind. And I want to go and point something out here. The Witcher 4 was a big part of the reason that this entire topic started in the first place, and I've heard a lot of conversation online about how gamers are concerned that it's not going to run on all of these lower spec machines, something like the Switch 2 or the Xbox Series S and this, that, and the other. And I think a part of that is because people are quoting small snippets of what CD Projekt Red actually said without context. Before people make assumptions, keep in mind that context is always very important, especially in situations like this. So before you worry yourself about all of that and where The Witcher 4 might end up being in, whenever it releases down the road, possibly years away, but let's just go and add some context to this situation here. CD Projekt Red actually mentioned that they now develop all of their games on the lowest spec hardware, such as consoles alongside the PC version. What they used to do was the exact opposite. They used to do PC first and then just kind of went from there, which, as we now know, resulted in a lot of problems for Cyberpunk when it first launched. So they have officially gone away from that philosophy. And that's all the more reason people shouldn't make assumptions about where The Witcher 4 will launch. It really just kind of depends on what their goals are and what generations they want to support. If they want to support this generation of consoles, then based on their wordage, they're already working with the lowest spec machines. So all I'm trying to say here is that some of that concern feels a little bit misplaced to me. Nonetheless, though, I fully expect the Switch 2 to have more third-party support next generation, especially if consumers prove that they will buy into third-party games on Nintendo hardware. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in its first year. My thinking is that its first year is going to be just port overload. I think third parties are going to absolutely swarm to the Switch 2 with games like Metaphor Fantasio, Persona 3 Reload. We've heard rumors about Square Enix and Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I think there's going to be a lot more that we haven't even heard about yet. So we're going to learn, and we're going to see a lot next year by just how much support consumers give to these type of games on the Switch 2, because if they sell well, which I think there's a possible chance for that, then that will pretty much guarantee that developers will support it with even more games. So with all that in mind, I think we're going to see a pretty significant uptick in third-party support for AAA games because of its more than capable hardware and also, quite frankly, because of its popularity. Again, developers want to be where gamers are. And you always have to kind of keep that in mind. But let me know what you all think about all of this. Do you agree with me here? Or do you think this will be yet another Nintendo device that struggles with third-party AAA games? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Absolutely sound off if you want. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell, and peace out.